This is Kevin Kirkland. I'm the author of the brand new children's book, The Little Engine That Could Not, A Triumph of Grace. I wanted to take a second today to share with you guys why I wrote this book and my personal I could not story. I grew up on the story about the little engine that could. I love that story. I love everything about the story. I love that the little engine just kept fighting his way to the top. No matter what obstacle was put in his way, he just kept working, kept digging, kept fighting to get where he wanted to get. I had no idea that that kind of thinking was completely contrary to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I was the little train. I was living out that kind of lifestyle. My whole life was based on the American dream of coming from the bottom to the top, of being my own kind of success. What I found preaching the gospel, the gospel of Jesus, all over the country for the past 15 years and finally having 4 children of my own, is that people everywhere were imprisoned by this kind of thinking. This I think I can became for them like a theology. Their relationship with God was based on how they looked on the outside, what good deeds they did, or this was the way that they thought they could please God. But it's not. The gospel of Jesus is about Jesus doing for us what we could never do, and that is to please God. My life was ruined by that kind of thinking until one day I finally came to grips with understanding that I think I can was contrary to the true gospel of who Jesus Christ is. On November 16th, 2000, I met my I could not moment. I married my college sweetheart, Kimberly, just 8 days after we graduated from college. And before Kimberly and I met and married, she had had 3 separate surgeries for a disease called endometriosis. We had no idea really what that meant, but the doctor said that we had about a 15% chance of ever having children. Well, as God would have it, 3 years later, we were pregnant with our first child. November the 16th, 2000, we walked into the hospital to have our son. After 17 hours of labor, well, I was exhausted. Kimberly looked a little exhausted too, but all of a sudden something changed. The doctors came in and said something's not right with the baby, and we need to take the baby via emergency C-section. Now, I had no idea what that meant, but they literally rushed us into an operating room, and they strapped my wife down and they began the procedure. And within minutes, the doctor literally reached into my wife and grabbed my son and pulled him out. I don't even know how to explain how I felt. I just was so overwhelmed at the opportunity to be a dad, but it was strange. Something wasn't right, and you could tell something wasn't right. My son was very blue. It got real, like really fast. He wasn't breathing, and so they rushed him to another little bed, and the nurses began to prod and push and put tubes in, and I had no idea what to even think or say, but I met my I could not right there at that moment. Everything that I loved in the world, everything, my wife and my brand new son were lying there in front of me, and as a husband and as a dad, I could not fix what was going on. I could not protect them. I could not put breath in my son's lungs, and something changed for me right there in the operating room. I got it. It finally made sense. I finally understood the gospel of Jesus, that I could not do what I needed to do. I didn't have the power to do for myself, to save myself. It really wasn't about my son and my wife. It was really about me understanding for the first time in my successful, self-driven, self-absorbed life that what God did for me in sending Jesus was a gift that I needed to receive, not work for. My soul, it fell to the ground right there in that operating room, and I just cried out to the Lord, and I said, Father, No matter what happens with my wife and my son, I get it. I understand that you're God and that I'm not. I understand that I can't, but that you can. I prayed that prayer. I said, God, I want you to be not just Savior, but Lord. I think it was probably seconds, but it seemed like minutes before my son began to cry. My wife began to laugh through anxious tears. But it really wasn't about them. It was more about what God was teaching me, what God was doing inside of me, an understanding about the fact that I could not. I finally understood. I finally understood what our little friend Peter and the little engine that could not comes to understand. That I could not save myself. I could not bridge the gap between my sin and the Father God. Like Peter in the story, Joshua, Jesus came to my rescue. I needed a Savior. You need a Savior. Our children need to hear and understand about the Savior, who is Jesus. The Little Engine That Could Not, A Triumph of Grace, is a book that every child needs to read. To understand that God is big and that we're small, that He is strong and that we're weak, and then that when we cannot, He already has. I pray it blesses you and every child that you read it to. My name is Kevin Kirkland, and I'm happy to say, I could not. For more information about the Little Engine That Could Not, A Triumph of Grace, for access to Little Engine Bible studies and activities, or to find out how to submit your very own I Could Not video, visit frogstreet.com/Little Engine Book or our website at catalystministries.org.